What if everything you thought you knew about risk and prediction was wrong? Imagine you're a European explorer in the late 17th century, sailing along the coast of Australia. You've spent your entire life believing that all swans are white. It's not just a personal belief, it's a fact accepted by every naturalist, every scientist, every educated person in Europe. Then as you round a bend in an Australian river, you see something that shatters your worldview, a black swan. In that moment, centuries of certainty crumble. The impossible has happened. The unthinkable has become reality. This story isn't just about birds. It's about how a single observation can invalidate a general statement derived from millennia of confirmatory sightings. It's about the limitations of our learning from observation and experience. And it's at the heart of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's groundbreaking book, The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable. Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, where we distill the most impactful ideas from the books shaping industries and driving innovation. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a book that challenges our fundamental understanding of risk, prediction, and the forces that shape our world. The Black Swan isn't just another business book. It's a paradigm-shifting work that forces us to reconsider how we think about uncertainty and randomness. Whether you're a seasoned CEO, an aspiring entrepreneur, or simply someone trying to navigate an increasingly unpredictable world, the insights from this book are more relevant today than ever before. So let's begin our journey into the world of black swans and discover how embracing uncertainty might be the key to thriving in a world where the impossible happens with alarming regularity. Let's start by understanding what exactly Taleb means by a black swan. It's not just a rare event. A black swan has three key characteristics. First, it's an outlier. It lies outside the realm of regular expectations because nothing in the past can convincingly point to its possibility. Second, it carries an extreme impact. Think of how the internet changed everything from how we do business to how we form relationships. And third, despite its outlier status, we concoct explanations for its occurrence after the fact, making it explainable and predictable. Some examples of black swans include the 9/11 attacks, the 2008 financial crisis, and the rise of the internet. Each of these events was largely unpredictable, had a massive impact, and was rationalized after the fact as if it were obvious all along. But here's the kicker. Taleb argues that these black swans, these unpredictable and high-impact events, are actually the primary determinants of our history. Not the regular day-to-day occurrences that we spend so much time analyzing and predicting. This idea challenges the very foundations of how we think about risk and prediction. We tend to focus on what we know, on what's familiar. We build elaborate models to predict the future based on past data. But in doing so, we systematically underestimate the impact of the unknown and the role of rare events. Think about it in terms of your own life or business. How many of the most significant events, positive or negative, were ones you saw coming? The job offer that changed your career trajectory, the chance meeting that led to a crucial partnership, the unexpected market shift that blindsided your industry. These are the black swans that shape our realities. The implication is profound. If the most impactful events are also the least predictable, then perhaps we need to radically rethink our approach to planning and risk management. So what's the actionable takeaway here? It's about humility. Recognizing the limits of our predictive abilities doesn't mean giving up on planning altogether. Instead, it means approaching the future with a sense of epistemic humility. An awareness that our knowledge is limited and that the most significant events may be those we can't foresee. In practical terms, this might mean 1. Spending less time trying to predict specific future events and more time building resilience to a range of potential outcomes. 2. Being open to opportunities that might seem unlikely but could have outsized impacts if they occur. 3. Maintaining a healthy skepticism towards expert predictions, especially in complex domains like economics or geopolitics. Remember, the inability to predict outliers implies the inability to predict the course of history. But by understanding this limitation, we can better position ourselves to handle whatever the future might bring. Now that we've grasped the concept of black swans, let's dive into another key idea from Taleb's book, the narrative fallacy. This concept helps explain why we're so blind to black swans in the first place. The narrative fallacy refers to our tendency to create simplistic stories to explain complex events. We're hardwired to prefer simple explanations over complex ones, and we love to impose patterns on random events. Let me illustrate this with a story. Imagine you're watching the stock market. Over the course of a day, the Dow Jones Industrial Average drops by 500 points. Almost immediately, you'll see financial news channels filled with experts explaining why this happened. They might blame it on a statement from the Federal Reserve, tensions in the Middle East, or weak corporate earnings reports. These explanations sound plausible. They create a neat cause and effect narrative that satisfies our need for understanding. But here's the problem. They're often just sophisticated guesses. The reality is that stock market movements, especially in the short term, are influenced by countless factors, many of which are unknowable or unmeasurable. This tendency to create post hoc explanations isn't limited to finance. We do it in our personal lives, in business, in politics, anywhere we encounter complexity or randomness. Why is this a problem? Because these narratives give us a false sense of understanding and predictability. They make us think we can foresee and control future events better than we actually can, and this overconfidence can lead to poor decision-making. Moreover, once we've accepted a narrative, we tend to filter new information through that lens. We pay attention to data that confirms our story and ignore or discount information that contradicts it. This is known as confirmation bias, and it's a close cousin of the narrative fallacy. So, how can we guard against this tendency? Here are a few strategies. 1. Be skeptical of simple explanations for complex events. When you hear a neat narrative explaining why something happened, ask yourself, what other factors might be at play? What information might be missing? 2. Embrace uncertainty. Instead of always seeking definitive explanations, get comfortable with saying, I don't know, or it's complicated. 3. Look for disconfirming evidence. When you have a theory or explanation, actively seek out information that might prove it wrong. 4. Consider multiple hypotheses. Instead of latching on to a single explanation, try to generate several possible explanations for events. By being aware of the narrative fallacy, we can start to see the world more clearly. We can recognize the complexity and randomness inherent in many situations, which in turn can help us make better decisions and be more prepared for those black swan events when they do occur. Now let's explore another fundamental concept from the Black Swan, the distinction between Mediocristan and Extremistan. These are Taleb's terms for two very different realms of randomness and variability. Mediocristan is the domain of mild randomness. It's where traditional statistics work well, where the bell curve is a useful model, and where extreme outliers are rare and have limited impact. Physical characteristics like height and weight typically belong to Mediocristan. If you gathered 1 million people and measured their heights, even the tallest person in the group wouldn't significantly affect the average. The difference between the tallest and shortest person would be noticeable, but not earth-shattering. Extremistan, on the other hand, is the domain of wild randomness. It's where black swans live. In Extremistan, a single observation can dramatically impact the aggregate or the total. Wealth is a classic example of an Extremistan variable. If you gathered 1 million people and calculated their average wealth, and then added Bill Gates to the group, the average would skyrocket. The difference between the richest and poorest person would be astronomical. Other examples of Extremistan phenomena include book sales, movie revenues, financial market returns, the sizes of planets, and the intensity of earthquakes. The crucial point is this: we often use tools designed for Mediocristan to analyze and predict Extremistan phenomena. And this can lead to catastrophic miscalculations. Let me give you a vivid example. Imagine you're a turkey on a farm. Every day, the farmer comes to feed you. Based on your daily experience, you might conclude that the world is a predictable place where friendly humans provide for your needs. Your life seems firmly rooted in Mediocristan. But then Thanksgiving arrives and you abruptly discover you've been living in Extremistan all along. This turkey problem, as Taleb calls it, is a metaphor for our own blindness to black swans. We use our everyday experiences to make assumptions about the future, not realizing that we might be completely unprepared for major game-changing events. So how can we apply this understanding of Mediocristan and Extremistan in practical terms? 1. First, identify which domain you're operating in. Are you dealing with variables that belong to Mediocristan, like manufacturing defects in a factory, or Extremistan, like startup valuations in Silicon Valley? 2. If you're in Extremistan, be extremely cautious about using averages or standard statistical tools. They can give a false sense of stability and predictability. 3. In Extremistan domains, focus more on the potential impact of events rather than their probability. A low probability event with an enormous potential impact deserves more attention than a high probability event with a small impact. 4. Build in redundancies and buffers. In Extremistan, the unexpected can have a massive impact, so it's crucial to have safeguards in place. 5. Be wary of expertise in Extremistan domains. Experts often use tools designed for Mediocristan to make predictions about Extremistan, leading to dangerous blind spots. By understanding the difference between Mediocristan and Extremistan, we can better gauge the limits of our knowledge and the potential for extreme events. This awareness is crucial for making better decisions in an uncertain world. Now let's turn to one of Taleb's most innovative ideas, the concept of antifragility. This idea, which Taleb expanded on in his follow-up book, Antifragile, is a natural extension of his thinking about black swans and randomness. To understand antifragility, let's first consider 3 categories of things. 1. Fragile things are harmed by volatility and disorder. Think of a delicate wine glass. It doesn't get better when you shake it or drop it. 2. Robust things are resistant to volatility and disorder. They neither significantly improve nor deteriorate. Think of a sturdy plastic cup. It can withstand a lot without breaking, but it doesn't get better. 3. Antifragile things actually gain from volatility and disorder. They get stronger or better when exposed to stressors up to a point. Antifragility goes beyond resilience or robustness. Resilient things resist shocks and stay the same. Antifragile things get better. So what are some examples of antifragile systems? Here are a few. Evolution is antifragile. Random mutations and changing environments lead to the development of stronger, more adapted species over time. Your immune system is antifragile. Exposure to germs and minor illnesses strengthens it. Many traditional human practices, like fasting or intense exercise, leverage antifragility. They introduce stress to the body, which responds by getting stronger. In the business world, Silicon Valley's culture of embracing failure and learning from mistakes is an example of antifragility at work. The concept of antifragility has profound implications for how we think about risk and uncertainty. Instead of merely trying to predict and avoid negative black swans, we can structure our lives, our businesses, and our societies to benefit from volatility and disorder. Here are some ways to apply the principle of antifragility. 1. Optionality. Keep your options open. The more options you have, the more you can benefit from uncertainty and change. This might mean maintaining a diverse skill set, or for a business, it could mean not overcommitting to a single strategy or product line. 2. Barbell strategy. Taleb advocates for a barbell approach to risk where you're extremely conservative in some areas and extremely aggressive in others. For instance, you might keep 90% of your investments in very safe assets and use the remaining 10% for high-risk, high-reward opportunities. 3. Skin in the game. Ensure that decision-makers have a personal stake in the outcomes of their decisions. This aligns incentives and helps prevent hidden fragilities from building up in systems. 4. Via negativa. Sometimes the best way to make something anti-fragile is by removing things, bad habits, unnecessary complications, or sources of fragility. It's often easier to identify what's wrong than what's right. 5. Embrace small errors. Don't try to eliminate all volatility or mistakes. Small, frequent errors can be informative and strengthening, preventing larger, catastrophic ones. By fostering anti-fragility, we can create systems, whether in our personal lives, our businesses, or our societies, that don't just survive in a world of uncertainty and black swans, but actually thrive on them. As we wrap up our exploration of the black swan, let's recap the main insights and discuss how we can apply them in our lives and businesses. First, we learned about black swans themselves, those rare, impactful, and retrospectively predictable events that shape our world far more than we realize. The key lesson here is humility. We need to acknowledge the limits of our predictive abilities and be prepared for the unexpected. Second, we explored the narrative fallacy, our tendency to create overly simplistic stories to explain complex events. By being aware of this tendency, we can resist the urge to oversimplify and maintain a more nuanced, realistic view of the world. Third, we delved into the distinction between Mediocristan and Extremistan, understanding that different phenomena require different analytical approaches. This knowledge can help us avoid misapplying statistical tools and better appreciate the potential for extreme events in certain domains. Finally, we touched on the concept of antifragility, the ability to gain from disorder. By fostering antifragility in our systems and strategies, we can position ourselves to benefit from the very uncertainty that threatens more rigid structures. So how can we put all this together in practical terms? For individuals, embracing these ideas might mean developing a diverse skill set to increase your optionality, being cautious about long-term planning and staying flexible, seeking out controlled stressors that can make you stronger, maintaining humility about your ability to predict the future. For businesses, applications might include building in redundancies and buffers to handle unexpected shocks, encouraging a culture that learns from small failures, avoiding over-optimization and maintaining slack in systems, being wary of expert predictions, especially in extremistan domains, using the barbell strategy in investment and business development. For society at large, these ideas suggest we should be skeptical of top-down, centralized planning. Encourage systems that allow for small-scale experimentation and failure. Prioritize robustness and anti-fragility over efficiency in critical systems. Rethink our approaches to risk management, especially in finance. The ideas in the Black Swan are challenging. They force us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the unpredictability of our world. But by embracing these concepts, we can become better prepared for whatever the future might bring. Remember, the goal isn't to predict black swans. By definition, we can't. The goal is to build systems and mindsets that can handle black swans and even benefit from them. It's about thriving in a world of uncertainty rather than being blindsided by it. As we come to the end of this episode, I encourage you all to read The Black Swan for yourselves. Taleb's ideas are rich and nuanced, and there's much more to explore than we could cover in this podcast. Remember, you can find a link to purchase the book in our episode description, whether you're reading it on your Kindle, listening to the audiobook, or going old school with a physical copy. I promise you'll find it a thought-provoking and potentially worldview-changing experience. Thank you for joining me on CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf. I hope this discussion of the Black Swan has given you new perspectives on risk, uncertainty, and the forces shaping our world. Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and stay open to the unexpected. Who knows? The next Black Swan might just work in your favor.